was stop measuring yourself by output volume. Headship can create the illusion that productivity equals worth. Emails answered, meetings attended, issues resolved. But high volume doesn't equal high impact. I began asking instead, where does my time create the most leverage, strategic clarity, people development, cultural signals? Everything else needed redesign or redistribution. Before we dive back in, I want to say something to head teachers listening. Attendance rarely improves through effort alone. It improves through clarity and alignment. If attendance still feels fragile in your setting, you can now apply for a senior attendance and leadership review. It begins with a short strategic assessment. If eligible, you'll be invited to claim a private one-to-one strategy session valued and fully funded at £700. That session includes not only a focused leadership review, but also a suite of practical strategic tools, frameworks, and templates designed to support your next 90 days and reduce reactive pressure in your context. This is not a compliance audit. This is an opportunity. It's a structured strategic intervention for senior leaders. If this feels relevant to you and your current context, then you can apply now using the link in the show notes or by scanning the code on screen. And now let's return back to the episode. I want to start with something very simple. If your workload feels unsustainable, it does not automatically mean that you are failing. It may mean that the structure is. There was a week in one of the schools I led that really still stands out to me. There were 3 safeguarding meetings. I remember a parental escalation. There was a budget review requiring difficult staffing decisions. I think an attendance panel and an external accountability call. Now, none of that, as I'm sure you know, as a leader, a head teacher, is unusual. That was not the problem. Nothing dramatic had happened. But by Thursday evening, I'd realised I'd not had a single uninterrupted hour just to think. Not one. I was moving from high emotion conversations to strategic financial planning to performance management without pause. And I remember sitting in my office thinking, this can't be how this role is meant to feel every week. But here is what many leaders do in that moment. They internalise it and they assume the pressure means they are not coping well enough. They work harder, they maybe stay later, and they reply faster. Yet the reality across the system shows this is not an individual weakness. Most leaders describe workload as unsustainable. It's a structural strain. The turning point for me was this. I stopped asking, how do I get through this? And I started asking, what in the system is creating this? That shift changed everything. Because when you frame it as a personal endurance, the only solution is more stamina. When you frame it as a structural design, you begin to examine delegation, rhythm, clarity, and boundaries. There were 3 practical shifts that helped, which I'd like to share with you now. Number 1 was stop measuring yourself by output volume. Headship can create the illusion that productivity equals worth. Emails answered, meetings attended, issues resolved. But high volume doesn't equal high impact. I began asking instead, where does my time create the most leverage, strategic clarity, people development, cultural signals? Everything else needed redesign or redistribution. Number 2, redesigning the week, not just the list. The problem was not the to-do list. It was the shape of the week. Too many emotionally heavy conversations all stacked together, too little protected thinking time, too much reactive scheduling. If you're doing that yourself, think about it. Ask your PA if you have one. I began blocking deliberate spaces, thinking time, classroom time, leadership development time, not because I had spare time, but because without it, I was reacting rather than leading. Review and reschedule. Number 3, removing yourself from the middle of everything. This was uncomfortable. If every decision flows through you, the system becomes dependent on you, and dependence creates overload. I had to ask, where am I stepping in because it feels quicker? Where am I holding control because it feels safer? Where am I unintentionally becoming the bottleneck in the situation, in the communication? Building capacity around me reduced volume over time, not instantly, but sustainably. There is something else that's worth saying clearly. Unsustainable workload doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like constant cognitive switching. You finish the day and you're mentally scattered. You're emotionally full, physically tired, but unable to switch off. That's not weakness. That's sustained cognitive strain. And strain without redesign, well, that becomes burnout. The hope is this conversation is not that workload disappears. It is that some of this is within your influence. You can't remove inspection cycles. You can't erase, sadly, funding constraints. But you can redesign rhythm. You can redistribute ownership, and you can protect your thinking space. You can stop measuring yourself by exhaustion. If your workload feels unsustainable right now, then pause. Ask yourself one question. What here is structural and what is self-imposed? That question alone can change trajectory, because leadership is demanding, but it should not require self-erasure. When you were appointed, you weren't appointed to survive the role. You were appointed to shape it. And shaping begins with design, not endurance. If you're a head teacher carrying attendance pressure, you can apply for the Senior Attendance and Leadership Review. It starts with a short assessment. Eligible leaders are invited then to claim a fully funded £700 private strategic session, including practical leadership tools to support a clear 90-day attendance focus. You can apply now using the link in the show notes. Thanks for listening. Let's stay connected.